The air conditioning unit wheezed like a dying smoker, and I couldn't help but think it had more life left in it than my marriage. At least when you break down, people actually want to fix you, I muttered to the rusty compressor, wiping sweat from my forehead with a greasy rag. My name's Owen Decker. Friends call me Oz, and I've been fixing broken things for 22 years. HVAC systems, furnaces, people's comfort problems, everything except my own life, apparently. The irony wasn't lost on me that I spent my days making other people's homes comfortable, while mine had become an Arctic wasteland of silent dinners and separate bedrooms. Carla, my wife of 15 years, had perfected the art of making me feel invisible without actually disappearing herself. I was packing up my tools when my phone buzzed. Text from Pete, my best friend and the only guy who still invited me for beers. Heading to Murphy's. You in? Before I could respond, another buzz, this one from Carla. Working late again. Don't wait up. Working late. Right. At 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, the real estate market was absolutely booming. I drove to Murphy's Bar, a dive that served cold beer and minded its own business. Pete was already there, nursing a Budweiser and shaking his head at the TV mounted above the bar. You look like someone stole your lunch money, Pete said, as I slid onto the adjacent stool. Worse. Someone stole my wife's interest in our marriage. I signaled the bartender for a beer. She's working late again. Pete's expression shifted. He knew something. I could see it in the way he suddenly found his beer label fascinating. What? I asked. Nothing, man. Just, maybe you should talk to her. I've tried. She acts like I'm furniture with a heartbeat. That's when I heard the laughter from the corner booth. Loud, obnoxious, familiar. Rick Maddox, owner of Fit Life Gym, holding court with his usual crowd of admirers. Ex-cop turned fitness guru, the kind of guy who wore tank tops in December and called everyone buddy like it was a threat. Speaking of stolen lunches, Pete muttered, following my gaze. Rick was gesturing wildly, telling some story that had his audience in stitches. I caught fragments. Married 15 years, and doesn't even know. My blood went cold. I strained to hear more. Carla says he's completely clueless. Poor bastard thinks she's actually working late. More laughter. She told me he hasn't touched her in months. Can you blame her for upgrading? The beer bottle slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. Every head in the bar turned toward me, including Rick's. Our eyes met across the smoky room, and his smirk told me everything I needed to know. He knew that I knew. Oz, Pete whispered, grabbing my arm. Let's go. But I was already standing, walking toward Rick's table with the kind of calm that comes before a hurricane. The conversations around us died as I approached. Rick, I said pleasantly. Funny running into you here. Oz! Rick's voice boomed with fake enthusiasm. How's the AC business? Cool as always. I smiled. Unlike some people's marriages, right? The table went silent. Rick's smirk faltered for just a second before returning full force. I wouldn't know about that, buddy. I'm single and loving it. Yeah, I heard. Though from what I understand, you're not as single as you pretend to be. Rick stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. He had 6 inches and 50 pounds on me, but I'd been lifting heavy equipment my whole life. More importantly, I had nothing left to lose. You got something to say, Oz? Just that you should be careful with other people's property. Sometimes the owner finds out. I turned and walked away, leaving Rick and his audience in stunned silence. Pete caught up with me in the parking lot. That was either really stupid or really brave, he said. Probably both. I drove home through empty streets, my mind racing. 15 years of marriage, and this is how it ends? Not with a conversation or counseling, but with my wife's boyfriend bragging about her in a bar? The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Carla's car was missing, which meant she really was working late. Just not at the office. I sat in my truck for a long time, staring at the house we'd bought as newlyweds. We'd painted it together, planned our future within its walls, talked about kids who never came, and dreams that slowly died. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. This is Jessa, Carla's friend. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Corner Coffee on Main Street. Jessa Moreno. I knew her. Salon owner, Carla's best friend. The kind of woman who collected secrets like some people collected stamps. Why would she want to meet with me? I had 20 hours to find out. The next afternoon, I found Jessa sitting in the back corner of Corner Coffee, nervously stirring a latte she clearly hadn't touched. She looked up as I approached, and I saw something unexpected in her eyes. Guilt. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat down. This is about Carla and Rick, isn't it? Jessa nodded, then pulled out her phone. There's something you need to hear. But first, you should know, I never meant for it to go this far. She tapped her screen, and suddenly, I was listening to my wife's voice, crystal clear through the phone's speaker. Honestly, Jess, I don't know why. I stayed married to him this long. Owen's about as exciting as watching paint dry, and in bed? Forget about it. I fake everything just to get it over with. Laughter from multiple women. My wife's friends, gathered around like vultures. At least Rick knows what he's doing, Carla continued. Last night at the gym, after hours. God, I forgot what it was like to actually enjoy sex. More laughter. More details I didn't need to hear about my wife's affair, delivered with the casual cruelty of someone who never expected to be caught. Jessa stopped the recording. There's more. Hours of it. I've been recording our girls' nights for months. Insurance, you know? In case anyone ever tried to use my secrets against me. But I never thought, why are you showing me this? Because you don't deserve this, Owen. And because Carla's planning something. She played another clip. This time, Carla's voice was different, calculating, cold. The divorce will be easy. Owen's too trusting to fight for anything. I'll get the house, half his business, and Rick and I can finally be together openly. Poor Owen will be so devastated, he won't even see it coming. I sat back in my chair, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Not just betrayed, but dismissed. Carla wasn't just cheating. She was planning to destroy me financially and emotionally, confident that I'd be too broken to fight back. When was this recorded? I asked. 3 days ago. 3 days. While I was fixing someone's broken furnace, my wife was planning to break me. What do you want in return for this? I asked. Jessa looked surprised. Nothing. I couldn't let her do this to you. You're a good man, Owen. You deserve better. I studied her face, looking for the angle. In my experience, people like Jessa always had an angle. There is one thing, she admitted. Carla's been spreading rumors about my salon. Trying to hurt my business because she thinks I'm too close to her secrets. She's planning to destroy both of us in different ways. There it was. The angle. But that didn't make the recordings any less real, or Carla's betrayal any less devastating. So what do you propose we do about it? Jessa smiled, and for the first time, it looked genuine. I think it's time Carla learned that some people fight back. That evening, I confronted my wife. She was in the kitchen, making herself a salad and humming like she didn't have a care in the world. How was work today? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. Busy. Showed 3 houses, had 2 callbacks. You know how it is. Actually, I don't. Why don't you tell me about it? Something in my tone made her look up. What's wrong with you? Nothing's wrong with me, Carla. But apparently a lot is wrong with us. She set down her fork. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know about Rick. For a split second, her mask slipped. I saw panic flash across her face before the defiance took over. I don't know what you think you know. I know you've been sleeping with him for months. I know you think I'm boring and clueless. I know you're planning to divorce me and take everything you can get. Carla straightened, her chin lifting in that familiar gesture of superiority. Well, if you know all that, then you know this marriage is over. You're right. It is. Good. At least we agree on something. She picked up her salad. I'll have my lawyer contact you next week. I watched her take a bite, completely calm, like we were discussing the weather instead of the end of our marriage. You know what the funny thing is, Carla? What? You always said I was too passive, too willing to let people walk all over me. She shrugged. It's true. You're absolutely right. But you know what else is true? What? You can talk about whoever you want with your friends. You absolutely can. Something in my tone must have warned her, because her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. But, I continued, other people can talk too. And sometimes they have very interesting things to say. I pulled out my phone and played Jessa's recording. Carla's own voice filled the kitchen, describing our sex life in humiliating detail, mocking me to her friends, planning my destruction. The fork clattered to the floor. Where did you get that? Does it matter? The question is, how do you think your real estate clients will react when they hear how you really talk about people? How do you think Rick's gym members will feel about their hero bragging about sleeping with married women? Carla's face had gone white. You wouldn't? A week ago, you'd have been right. But that was before I found out my wife of 15 years thinks I'm too pathetic to fight back. I headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and Carla, pack a bag. I'm changing the locks tomorrow. You can stay with Rick. The next morning, I woke up alone in my house for the first time in 15 years. It should have felt lonely. Instead, it felt like freedom. My phone was buzzing with missed calls and texts. Carla mostly, but also numbers I didn't recognize. Word was spreading. I made coffee and called Pete. Jesus, Oz, what did you do? Carla's been calling everyone saying you've lost your mind. I found it, actually. What's she saying? That you're spreading lies about her, trying to ruin her reputation. She's playing the victim pretty hard. Let her. Truth has a way of coming out. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. Male voice, angry. This is Rick Maddox. We need to talk. Sure, Rick. What's on your mind? You know damn well what's on my mind. This has to stop. What has to stop? The recordings, the rumors, whatever game you're playing. I'm not playing any games. Just having conversations with people. You know how it is. Sometimes the truth comes up. Listen to me very carefully, you little weasel. Stay away from my gym, stay away from my friends, and keep my name out of your mouth. Or we're going to have a problem. We already have a problem, Rick. You slept with my wife. Your wife came to me, buddy. Don't blame me because you couldn't keep her satisfied. The line went quiet. I could hear Rick breathing heavily, probably expecting me to hang up or start crying. Instead, I laughed. You know what's funny, Rick? You think you won something. But all you really won was Carla. And if she'll cheat with you, what makes you think she won't cheat on you? I hung up before he could respond. Over the next few days, the recordings spread through our small town like wildfire. Jessa had been strategic, sharing them with key people who had their own reasons to dislike Carla or Rick. The real estate gossip network was particularly efficient. Carla's phone calls became increasingly desperate. She tried anger, tears, bargaining, threats. Nothing worked. The truth was out, and it was spreading faster than she could contain it. Rick, meanwhile, had started showing up at places I frequented. Murphy's Bar, the hardware store where Pete worked, even the gas station near my house. He never approached directly, just made sure I saw him. Intimidation tactics from his cop days, probably. It might have worked on the old Owen, but the old Owen was gone. The confrontation came on a Friday night. I was leaving Murphy's after dinner with Pete when Rick stepped out of the shadows near my truck. Time for that conversation, he said. Pete started to get out of his own truck, but I waved him off. This was between Rick and me. What do you want to talk about, Rick? You're going to stop this campaign against Carla and me. You're going to tell people those recordings were fake, that you made them up because you're bitter about the divorce. And why would I do that? Rick stepped closer, using his size to try to intimidate me. Because if you don't, I'm going to make your life very unpleasant. More unpleasant than finding out my wife's been cheating on me with the town's biggest asshole? You want to find out? I looked up at Rick, way up, since he had me by half a Z. Foot and smiled. You know what your problem is, Rick. You think being big and loud makes you dangerous, but you're not dangerous. You're just a middle-aged ex-cop who peaked in high school and never got over it. Rick's face darkened. What did you just say to me? I said you're pathetic. You had to steal another man's wife because you can't get a woman of your own. And now that everyone knows what kind of man you really are, you're trying to bully me into silence. Rick grabbed my shirt, pulling me close. I could break you in half, little man. You could try. But then you'd be back in handcuffs, wouldn't you? And this time, it wouldn't be for domestic violence against some other guy's wife. Rick's grip loosened. I'd hit a nerve. That's right, Rick. Small towns talk. We all know why you really left the force. The anger management issues, the complaints from your partner, the incident with your captain's wife. Shut up. You're not a hero, Rick. You're just another small-town loser who thinks his muscles make him special. And now everyone knows it. Rick shoved me backward, hard enough that I stumbled. But I didn't go down, and I didn't stop talking. The best part is, you actually think Carla loves you. But you heard those recordings. She talks about you the same way she talked about me. You're just her current entertainment. I said shut up. Rick swung at me, a wild haymaker that I saw coming from a mile away. I ducked, and his fist connected with the side of my truck instead of my face. He howled, clutching his hand. Probably broke something. That's assault, Rick, in front of witnesses. I nodded toward the bar where several people had come outside to watch. Want to explain to the police how the town hero attacked a guy half his size? Rick looked around, realizing how this looked. A big ex-cop beating up a smaller man in a parking lot. Not exactly the image he'd cultivated. This isn't over, he snarled, cradling his injured hand. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. Rick limped back to his Mustang and drove off, leaving me standing in the parking lot with a crowd of witnesses and a smile on my face. Pete jogged over. Holy shit, Oz. I thought he was going to kill you. Nah, guys like Rick are all bark. The moment someone stands up to them, they fold. But I knew Rick wasn't done. Men like him didn't handle humiliation well, especially public humiliation. He'd be back, probably with a plan. I was ready for him. The plan came 3 nights later. I was working late in my garage, organizing tools and trying to keep my hands busy while my mind processed everything that had happened. The divorce papers had arrived that morning, along with Carla's demands for half of everything I'd worked for. I heard footsteps on the gravel driveway around 11 p.m. Slow, deliberate, trying to be quiet. I killed the lights and moved to the window. Rick's Mustang was parked at the end of my driveway, engine running. Rick himself was creeping toward my garage, something in his hand. A crowbar, maybe, or a bat. I smiled in the darkness. He was making this too easy. I'd spent the last 3 days preparing for this moment. Security cameras installed, neighbors alerted, local police given a heads up about Rick's erratic behavior. Everything documented, everything legal. Rick reached the side door of the garage and tried the handle. Locked, of course. He raised whatever he was carrying, definitely a crowbar, and prepared to force it. That's when I hit the lights and the alarm simultaneously. Floodlights blazed from every corner of my property, turning night into day. The security alarm shrieked like a banshee, loud enough to wake the entire neighborhood. And the sprinkler system I'd accidentally left running soaked Rick from head to toe. Rick spun around, blinded and disoriented, slipped on the wet concrete, and went down hard. The crowbar skittered away across the driveway, I stepped out of the garage, holding my phone up to record everything. Evening, Rick. Little late for a social call, isn't it? Rick struggled to his feet, soaked and furious. You son of a bitch! Now. That's no way to talk to your host, especially when you're trespassing on his property with a crowbar. Lights were coming on in houses up and down the street. My neighbors were emerging from their homes, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Levinson from next door was already on her phone, probably calling the police. You set me up. I defended my property against a known violent individual. There's a difference. Rick looked around, realizing how bad this looked. He was soaking wet, holding a crowbar on my property in the middle of the night, surrounded by witnesses. This is harassment, he shouted. You've been stalking me, spreading lies about me, trying to ruin my life. Actually, Rick, I've been telling the truth about you. And you just proved every word of it. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Rick heard them too and started backing toward his car. Don't even think about it, I called out. You run now and it becomes fleeing the scene. Just stand there and take your medicine like a man. Rick stopped, trapped between his car and the approaching police. His shoulders sagged as he realized there was no way out of this that didn't end with handcuffs. 2 patrol cars pulled up, officers stepping out with hands near their weapons. They took in the scene quickly. Wet, angry ex-cop with a crowbar, calm homeowner with a phone, crowd of witnesses. What's the situation here? The lead officer asked. This man was attempting to break into my garage, I said, handing over my phone. I have it all on video. Rick tried to explain, but his story made no sense. Why was he at my house at 11 p.m.? Why did he have a crowbar? Why was he soaked? The officers weren't buying it, especially when Mrs. Levinson mentioned Rick's earlier threats and the incident at Murphy's bar. As they cuffed Rick and put him in the patrol car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Satisfaction. Not just because Rick was finally facing consequences, but because I'd stood up for myself. I'd fought back, and I'd won. The crowd began to disperse, neighbors patting me on the back and offering support. Word would spread by morning. The whole town would know that Rick Maddox had been arrested trying to break into Owen Decker's garage. But the real surprise came the next morning. I was drinking coffee on my front porch, reading about Rick's arrest in the local paper's online edition, when Carla's car pulled into my driveway. She got out slowly, looking older than her 39 years. The stress was showing. Dark circles under her eyes, hair not quite perfect, clothes that looked like she'd slept in them. We need to talk, she said. The lawyers can handle that. Please, Owen. Just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I led her onto the porch. She sat in the chair she'd occupied hundreds of times during better days, when we'd planned our future and shared our dreams. I heard about Rick, she said. Yeah. Turns out your boyfriend has anger management issues. Who could have seen that coming? Carla flinched. He's not my boyfriend anymore. Oh. I ended it yesterday, before what happened last night. Why? She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because you were right. About everything. I was right about a lot of things. You'll have to be more specific. Rick doesn't love me. He never did. I was just convenient. A way to feel powerful, stealing another man's wife. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. And I was stupid enough to fall for it. So, what do you want from me, Carla? Sympathy? Forgiveness? I want to call off the divorce. I nearly dropped my coffee cup. What? I made a mistake, Owen. A huge, terrible mistake. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling, start over, rebuild what we had. I stared at her, this woman I'd loved for 15 years, and felt nothing. No anger, no love, no desire for revenge. Just emptiness. No, I said. What? I said no. We're not fixing anything. We're not starting over. We're done. But I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of not being alone, now that Rick's shown his true colors. You love the security I represented, the comfortable life I provided. But you don't love me. Carla started crying harder. That's not true. It is true. And you know what? That's okay. Because I don't love you anymore either. The words surprised me as much as they surprised her. But as soon as I said them, I knew they were true. Somewhere between the recordings and the confrontations and the arrest, my love for Carla had died. Not killed by anger or revenge, but simply gone. Owen, please. The divorce stands, Carla. You can have your half of everything, just like you planned. But I'm done being married to someone who thinks so little of me. She sat there for another minute, crying quietly before finally standing up. I'm sorry, she said, for all of it. You deserved better. Yeah, I agreed. I did. She walked back to her car without another word. I watched her drive away, probably forever, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. My phone buzzed. Text from Jessa. Heard about Rick. You okay? I typed back, better than okay. Want to grab dinner tonight? Her response came quickly. I'd love to. I smiled, finished my coffee, and went inside to shower. I had a date to get ready for, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was looking forward to what came next. 6 months later, Rick's gym went out of business. Turns out, people don't want to give their money to someone who breaks into houses with crowbars. He left town shortly after, probably to find another small community where his reputation hadn't preceded him. Carla got her divorce and her half of everything, just like she'd planned. But without Rick and with her reputation in ruins, she struggled to rebuild her real estate career. Last I heard, she'd moved to Portland, trying to start fresh. As for me, I married Jessa in a small ceremony at the courthouse, with Pete as my best man and Mrs. Levinson as our witness. We bought a bigger house on the other side of town, where we could start fresh without the ghosts of my first marriage. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how everything went down, if I wish I'd handled it differently. The answer is no. For the first time in my adult life, I'd stood up for myself, fought back against people who thought they could walk all over me, and won. Carla was right about one thing. I used to be too passive, too willing to let people take advantage of me. But that man was gone, replaced by someone who knew his own worth and wouldn't settle for less than he deserved. And that, more than any revenge, was the real victory.